And here this is probably one of the critical moments of the game, because White was really struggling to find the right idea to go for. He played knight f3, but it was very interesting to play e5. Unfortunately, after e5, unfortunately for White, Black is not forced to take f takes e5 because that would open the positions. So let's just imagine e5, f takes e5, and then this rook comes with great force, hitting the queen on f7, and also possibly White could further go e6, or in some lines even just take on d6. So that's sort of a tactical point. But after e5, Black can just ignore that, play bishop c5, maintain the bishop pair, and take on e5 once he is just ready. So this was probably not the greatest alternative. So in that context, knight f3 looks like a decent try. But still, it looks like Grishuk has a space advantage, but cannot really use it. Rook d8, finally e5, but this is just a completely different version of the same idea. Take, White takes with the pawn, and queen g6. This is quite an important move. It sidesteps the ideas on f-file, also hits the pawn on c2, and in some positions the queen might be used for attacking the white king, because now it puts some pressure on the pawn on g2. Queen a7, so Black is also having some issues with the queenside pawn structure. Bishop b4. Of course, something like this needs to be done, because otherwise the bishop on d6 will be taken, or the pawn on b7. So with this little move, Aronian just makes Grishuk deal with his own problems. Rook d1, bishop c8, queen f2, rook takes d1, rook takes d1, rook f8. So with this little exchange, you may get a feeling that already Aronian is trying to seize the initiative, and it's actually quite true. Even though White has a passer on e5, it's never going to move forward, and in fact now it is White who is under some pins. A few diagonals have been opened, and the knights on g3 and f3 are just very passive, while the rook on d1 is shooting empty squares on the d file. So it's really not what should have happened from Grishuk's perspective. Queen e2, bishop e7, rook f1, h6, so waiting but improving the position, knight d4, and this is definitely a mistake. It was not advisable for Grishuk to make anything, any simplification moves on the board, because now after c5, rook takes f8, bishop takes f8, knight f3. It's just much easier for Black to play. Without the rooks, there is no danger. White has no counterplay whatsoever. A moment ago, he still had some issues with maybe preventing the pawn from e5 to go forward. Also, the black king was not entirely safe. And now, even though structurally speaking, White is still much better, the bishops really get to play, and they very easily dominate the white knight. So let's see how Aronian converted his positional advantage. First, bishop e6. Blockading the passed pawn is very often a good idea, and it's impossible to remove the blockade since d4 square is covered by the pawn on c5. That's a very important detail. Knight f1, b5. So Aronian is trying to take advantage of his pawn structure on queenside. c4 prevents further move of the pawn, so c4 move would actually, if Black played c4, that would enable him to undouble the pawns, so which would already be a huge achievement. c4 is an attempt to stop that, but because of this move, after bc4, bc4, even though it looks like black's pawn structure is just ugly, but in fact it is the c4 pawn which will prove to be a weakness. And the fact that black has such a bad looking pawn structure means totally nothing. It's just they look bad, but they're very strong, and they're everything is under black's control here. So black played queen b1, and now everything just falls apart from white's perspective. h3, queen c1, knight d2, bishop e7, so the second bishop gets into play, and white is still deprived of any active play. King h2, bishop g5, so now bishop f4, bishop takes d2. These ideas are something that Grishuk always needs to keep in mind. g3, queen c2, and now, as you see, full dominance. It's just impossible to move practically any piece. The knight on d2 is pinned, the knight on f1 is tied down to protection of the knight on d2, the queen on e2 is also tied down to protection of the knight on d2, and the pawn on a2 is about to fall. So this is just a hopeless picture. a3, queen f5, transferring the queen, g4, and this is a further weakening. Bishop f4, king g2, queen takes e5. So now Aronian made a very practical decision. Two bishops against two knights will be much better in any endgame. It's pointless to play for any bigger advantage. This is just sufficient. Let's see how he converted this. Knight f3, bishop b2, so now the a pawn is the target. Knight b1. As you see, both knights are horribly placed because they just need to play a passive role of protecting those two weaknesses that are on the board. So the knight on b1 is tied down to protection of a3, the knight on e3 is tied down to protection of c4. King f7, king f3, king f6, king e4, king g5, now the penetration on king side comes, knight d5, takes, and that is something just Aronian just calculated. So king h4, knight d2, and bishop a3. White was never actually creating any threat of playing king f5, king e6, king d7, because then at the very end black can just play bishop e5 and make everything under control. So again, a great display of how the bishops nicely dominate the knights. And let's move on to the last example. This is Lyuboyevich Karpov, a very short example, but something I really wanted to show you, because this position actually looks quite innocent. There is non-symmetrical pawn structure, both players have something to play on. It seems that white is maybe better on queen side, black is in turn putting some pressure on king side. At the same time, white has some tactical ideas on f7, but he also has an a file. On the other hand, black has the better pawn structure, so it looks reasonably balanced. But with just one move, Lyuboyevich turns things upside down, turns the tables, and seizes great advantage. If you have been waiting for any exercises, then this is definitely the position you would like to invest some time in. This is really worth thinking about. So if you need some time, if you feel like solving this one, feel free. It's not that it's winning with white directly, but well, I would call it white to move and seize advantage in one or in two moves. So feel free to pause the video, take as much time as you need, because now I'm going to tell you what happened. And what happened was truly amazing. Knight e3. And it looks like an impossible move, even illegal, because it's just putting the white queen into direct danger, because after bishop takes b3 the queen is lost. But so is the queen on c6. So you could also argue